you so freaking bad? Wrestle me.
Welcome back, everybody, to Juice Pro Wrestling Podcast, episode 223. What's inside a girl? You're getting ready to fucking find out what's inside the BWC Cruiserweight Champion, the Great Equalizer, the Mistress of Fucking Dark, the one, the only Angel Metro. Oh my God! Girl, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for the boisterous introduction. Appreciate it.
No problem. You know, I like to get my little, I'm a death metal guy, so I try to incorporate and throw the whole musical thing in there.
I respect it.
Fuck yeah. Speaking of music, I see you're rocking a Cramp shirt. Good on you, girl. I got my Cramps. They appeared on this soundtrack, Return to Living Dead.
Yep.
Surfing Dead, all that good shit. But speaking of music, I was doing a little bit of research on you. You used to do music. Are you still involved in it? And what would you categorize what you do as? Because I've seen, like, I'm gonna fucking butcher it, so you know, please don't stab me or anything. But it was like some like with the like dark witchery, like electronics fucking shit. I don't know. I'm not into it. To me, it sounded like some cool fucking moody music, you know, that maybe I fucking chill and have a few beers and just, yeah, man, vibe to.
Yeah, so I did music for many years before I started wrestling. I primarily ran in the goth alternative industrial scenes. I was a musician in that for many years. I ran a club night weekly for a couple of years, DJ'd, all of that. As far as my solo stuff, I categorize it as dark electronic with bloodlines in synth pop and witch house. So that's probably where you got the witchy stuff from.
That's what I was looking for. Hey, you know, I'm unfamiliar with it, girl. I'm learning.
All good. Yeah, it's a bit of a mix of genres there. But yeah, so I did that for many years. Since I started wrestling training, though, I've been primarily just focused on that. Wrestling takes up so much of my time. And yeah, you just got to put everything into it. So that's where my attention's at.
Well, I mean, you know, because like I said, being a musician myself, I'm still doing the band shit. I kind of want to just go a little bit, maybe a couple more minutes on that, and then we'll get into the wrestling part of this, because you know it's not all about wrestling, boils and ghouls. You know, we want to try to meet these people and figure out what the fuck they're all about. But anyways, I digress. What is the scene like? I mean, I've been, like I said, I'm a death metal grindcore kid. There was a period of time like 10 years ago where me and some of my bandmates got wrapped up into like some rave shit. And I don't know how the fuck that happened, but like all of a sudden it's just like, like, wow, this is fucking weird. You know, these dudes wearing dying fetus shirts and shit, but they're all about the neon lights and the glow and shit like that. So I've been to those. What is, and you mentioned your DJing, what is like a goth, like synth, what is that scene like in the clubs and shit?
Well,
what are those shows like?
It just depends on the region that you're in and the type of, goth is kind of a blanket term for dark alternative music. So you're a fan of the Return of the Living Dead. It could be a club night that looks like that in the cemetery. It could be a club scene like out of Blade, the vampires, the blood pouring from the ceiling. It could look like Tron. It could look like really anything, to be honest with you. It's a conglomerate, and goth has been around for, I mean, proper goth since the late 70s. So it's gone through many decades and many reincarnations.
Oh, yeah, like Bauhaus and all that shit.
Yeah, Bauhaus, Susie and the Banshees. Yeah.
And you could even consider like Joy Division goth, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. So goth started out as, what we categorize now as post-punk. Right. And, you know, we had the punk scene start up in the 70s, late 60s, going into the 70s is when it kind of started getting its feet. And post-punk was... Yeah, absolutely. The Damned. Post-punk was basically like, okay, so we've got punk music, super angry, super, like not yes, anti-government, anti-corruption is actually the phrase I was looking
Right.
for, and just, taking action. And then post-punk was more like, cool, that's dope. We are angry, but also we have these other feelings that we would like to express. So we're gonna just kind of spin off. We'll still catch you guys at like the rallies and stuff and in the clubs, but we kind of want to emote other things over here too. So we're gonna go ahead and do that, and that's where post punk came from. That evolved into gothic rock.
Definitely a little more emotional. And I just there's this guy that does a podcast called The Vinyl Guide, and what's this dude's name? I think it's like John Rudd or something like that is the dude's name. He wrote this book. It's like the history of goth, and like this, it just came out, so I got pretty schooled in all that shit.
If it's
recently.
the one I'm thinking of, I have some friends in that book.
No shit.
Yeah, if it's the one with the photo depictions and yeah. Anyway.
I haven't seen the cover yet. Like I said, I just listened to the episode, and it's really cool. It's really like super informative because there's a lot of stuff, like especially in the music genre and shit I came up in as a kid, and being old school like punk rock kid in the hardcore. I got started in 4th grade or something on Nirvana, so it was like. They turned me on to all the 80s hardcore punk and like metal and shit. And then you dig deeper and you find all these elements of goth like in everything. It's fucking nuts. And not just the music, but it's like this fucking culture, goth architecture, like clothing, like this whole culture, this whole scene. It's just evolved over time. And we mentioned some of the like Bauhaus and earlier like goth bands. They're kind of seeing nowadays like a renaissance, maybe because everybody's fucking depressed or they're posers or I don't know, but it's coming back. It's pretty fucking cool,
Yeah, I mean, trends and things that are in popularity definitely come in a cycle. And I think it's depends on which age groups are starting to come of age and then go through the different that has a play into it. But I mean, anytime that there's a period of darkness, which is basically all of human history, there is something in that the goth scene has pulled from that, which is why you'll see goths in pretty much any walk of life. You'll see them hanging out at the bookstore. You'll see them in the clubs. You'll see them at a show completely unrelated to gothic music. You'll see them at a Ren fair. You'll see them at a Comic-Con, like wherever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's invaded the masses. So you mentioned you haven't been involved in wrestling very long, like a year, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I started training about a year ago.
And you're training under fucking Jimmy Valiant, a fucking legend of professional wrestling. Like here, I mean, I respect the old school so fucking much. I love everything from the old to the new and everything in between. But what was that like training with him?
It was... I don't want to say a one-of-a-kind experience, but I can just say that I was incredibly grateful to be around someone that has spent 50 years in the business, over 50 years at this point, actually.
Uber respected by many, many people too.
Yeah, someone that helped shape wrestling as we know it today, that firsthand experience was a part of the territories era before WWE, WWF.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Came and kind of changed the way that wrestling works now. It was incredible. I mean, and every week we get to sit down with him and hear a story from history from him as he was there living it. And yeah, definitely really just grateful to have had that experience.
Was that something you were into like beforehand, before you got into the wrestling, or like were you aware of like an appreciative of wrestling history and territorial history per se?
Yeah, I mean, once I started training, I certainly learned a lot more than I had previously, but definitely in anything that I do, I like learning the history of, I like going back several generations to learn how things got from point A to, point Z, right, or wherever they're at now. yeah, so it was great. And then once I started training, really taking a deep dive to the very bare bones of like how wrestling came to be as we know it now from European immigrants migrating to the Midwest, and how that style of wrestling came in and how that morphed into the pro wrestling that we know now. So yeah.
Fuck yeah. I love the deep dives in history, and Sretton is a huge fan of that old school stuff. A great place to dig a lot of that information up. If you ever get a chance to attend like the Cauliflower Alley Club, like that's just chock full.
I'd love to. I follow them on social media.
Yeah,
and
me too.
I've donated to them a few times when they've had certain things they were raising money for. So yeah, hopefully.
So let me ask you this. So maybe unbeknownst to a lot of people, because you're kind of, you're new on the scene. You were in a relationship with one Markus Crane, pretty infamous deathmatch wrestler, Chicagoland area. Seen him many a times at wrestling shows, and then just playing, at Reggie's and shit out in the city. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. What can you tell us? I mean, if anything, if you're willing to share, of course. What was your relationship like with him, and how did you guys meet? And did that have anything to do like with you getting involved in the business?
We met. I was on a national tour doing music, and we had played Chicago. We played Reggie's, and basically before the show, the manager asked us, hey, after the show, do you guys want to go to this crappy little punk club? And I was like, absolutely, I do want to go. We're all going to the crappy little punk club. And it ended up being Club Exit, which Markus is also very much known for. So he actually, I guess, saw my show. I hadn't met him at that point, but we were at Exit, and he was friends with one of the musicians that was on tour with in another band. And basically that musician told him, hey, keep an eye on my people, kind of thing, because we're in Chicago and all of that. Yeah. And so I met him briefly. And at some point during the night, with it being Exit, we're all having a good time. And one of the bartenders asked me to get up on the bar with her, like Coyote Ugly style. Right. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. She's like, come on. And I was like, all right, sure. Get up there, I do the thing, blah, 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 done, right? And then I'm like, at some point later, I'm like, I've lost my phone. I was like, I lost my cell phone, and I started freaking out because we are in Chicago. I'm never going to see my phone again. I'm on tour. I've still got weeks left. Like, how am I going to communicate? How am I going to get a replacement phone on a tour bus that's going all over the country, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, I've lost my phone, blah, blah. And so Markus came up. He's like, what's wrong? I was like, I lost my cell phone. Like, and he gets... Anyone that knows Markus, he gets this very determined look, right, when he's ready to do something. So he's like, I'm going to help you find your phone. So he had his iPad, and he like takes out his iPad. He's like, do you remember your Apple login? And somehow I did, because I couldn't even tell you what it is now. But at that moment, I was really focused. So anyways, we put it in and everything. And eventually he helped me find my cell phone. And I was like, that's amazing, because we're in a crappy punk club in Chicago. Like, how would that ever... That thing was gone. I figured it'd be in Detroit by now. Like, there's no way that phone was, like, still in that place. But, yeah, he helped me find my phone. And so I said, add me on Facebook. Like, that was so nice of you to do that. And I really was appreciative. There's no reason he had to do that, like, at all. But, those were his stomping grounds. And he really did try to care and take care of people. And, yeah, so I don't know if at that point I knew he was a wrestler, or maybe vaguely mentioned. I really don't know. But so he added me on Facebook, and he'd send me messages here and there, just like asking when I'd be back in Chicago and stuff. I was like, I don't know, still recovering from the last time. And
aren't we all?
Yeah, and so I learned, a bit more about what he was doing in wrestling and stuff like that. And it was cool, and didn't really let it go any further than that. And then he ended up in the hospital with his injury. And I was just like, oh my God, like, this is like, oh my God. And it just really, like, and I was like, I don't know, should I rate the guys that are on tour? They're not even going to remember him. But this is like, you know, this is insane. So I followed and donated to the little GoFundMe that is, I think his cousin set up. And so basically, when he could write again or just function on his phone, of course, the first thing he always was on his phone.
Yeah.
And so I think it was like one of my Facebook stories or something like that. He just like replied with a happy face or something like that. And I was like, hey, Markus, like, how are you doing? And he's like, soft words. That was his response, because at the time he only had 30% of his speech.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very limited. And so basically from there, we just talked every day because he was lonely in there and he couldn't really talk to anyone. He really couldn't talk in general. And yeah, we just kind of became inseparable. And that's pretty much how it was until he passed. So I was a fan of wrestling as a kid.
Really?
I was. Well, you know, being a goth and being in the era of the Attitude Era.
Gangrel?
I'll actually tell you the story of what happened. So, you know, since I was tiny, I was a big fan of like horror movies and pretty much anything spooky, whatever. And one day I was just flipping through the channels late night because I would stay up and watch like X-Files and like Star Trek: The Next Generation, you know, Voyager and stuff like that. So I was flipping through the channels and I saw this scene and I was like, what is this? Like, I've never seen anything like this before. And it was WWF, and it was a recap of the 98 Hell in the Cell between Taker and Mankind, which is iconic now.
Yeah.
But at the time it had just happened. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, his teeth are in his nose. He just got thrown up. And what is this? Right? And so I was just like hooked from then on out. And I fell in love with wrestling. And I watched it for a while, and you know, I had like the little action figures and they'd play in their fake little toy ring and all of that. But over time, I realized that I was probably, well, it felt like I was probably the only person on the face of the planet that liked wrestling, because I'm from San Francisco originally. And as an 8-year-old in San Francisco, there wasn't it's not like growing up in Ohio, you know what I mean? Wasn't a huge wrestling scene around me at the time. And I remember
more about the rice-a-roni I hear from out there. You know? It's a treat.
And so I remember being outside of school one day, like against the wall of the front of the school, and I had like my little Stone Cold action figure. I'm just playing by myself because I was a nerdy kid. So awesome. I wasn't really popular anyways. You know, I was just like another uncool nerdy kid that got picked on. And I remember I was playing with them, and like one of the boys actually walked up to me. He's like, "What are you doing playing with that guy in his underwear?" And I was like, they don't get it. I was like, is this like awful? Like, is this horrible? I was like, I love it. I think it's great, but it seems like no one else understands what's going on here. And so eventually I kind of phased out of it from there. And it wasn't until Markus and I started dating that I really got to get back into it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, so what age are we talking, like time gap between then? We talking like 5 years, 10 years?
Well, I was 8 before, so not 5.
Oh, well, you know. Yeah.
We're talking a good stretch of time there, you know, like I can't do math very well, but
it's all good. Ignore that question. It was ignorant.
Yeah, it's okay.
But it's weird I mean, I guess you said that was out in San Fran area?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At
that time, you know, I mean, you're out there with a Stone Cold figure, and that's like prime time. Like Stone Cold's like, I mean, the dude was everywhere. Across, you know, like talk about crossover. I figured, you know, if that was me, I'd be oh hell yeah. What the fuck?
Well, I also grew up in the Mission District of San Francisco, which is a very low income neighborhood at the time. Now it's all gentrified, but at the time it was
gentrification.
And so it was just a different scene.
Right on. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you witnessed the brutality of, you know, that's what got you hooked was, I mean, obviously that crazy fucking Hell in a Cell, like you said, it's iconic, you know, Mick Foley smiling with his teeth like up here and whatever in his ear, or his tooth was in his nostril, I believe. He's just smiling after he just took two of the craziest bumps anybody's probably ever seen in wrestling, other than maybe Vic Grimes falling in XPW. But with Markus now, like when you say you get back into wrestling with it, were you aware of like the whole deathmatch scene? Because I mean, that's what dude was fucking known for. And what was your first reaction to that shit? Because that's a whole different level. I mean, there's Hell in a Cell, which is like extremely brutal. Don't get me wrong, but then you go into the deathmatch world, and it's just like, you know, it's not everybody's cup of tea. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, actually, when we were first talking about it, that was the match that I referenced, was Hell in the Cell. Cause I was like, you mean like that? Stuff like that? You guys get like thumbtacks and stuff? You guys get to do that stuff? And he's like, yeah. I was like, that's pretty cool. I was like, show me some stuff. I felt at home with it, honestly. Again, being a horror movie fan and being a kid that, much like yourself, grew up in the punk scene where you're fighting someone every weekend in the pit anyways. It was kind of, I'm not an inherently violent person, but it seems like violence just kind of was something that played a role in my life. So Deathmatch, yeah, it was amazing. I thought it was incredible. One of the first things he sent me was, I think it was Vice did a documentary on his friend Cass.
Yeah, Casanova Valentine. He was on the show. He's a good dude.
He's great. But yeah, it was that, and sent me some photos of him and Cass wrestling, and he had like a light tube and like grinding it and their heads and stuff. And I was like, this is really cool. I was like, oh, that's cool. Because at that point, I had only gotten to know him as him at his bare bones, because, you know, with him having been injured and being in the hospital and stuff, like I really got to know the core of Markus, and everything else that he was to the outside world kind of fell into place after the fact. But I loved it. I thought Deathmatch was awesome. Like, I was amazed, and I think like most people, you're amazed and horrified and interested and repulsed and, oh my God, like, how do they do this? You know, like, it's just crazy. But yeah, I loved it.
It takes a different breed for sure. I mean, I don't know if I'd ever want to, you know, I've been sliced myself open working and doing all kinds of shit and whatever and playing shows, but man, just these men and women willingly brutalize themselves in like an ultra violent way for our entertainment. And Stretton doesn't like it. He's not a big fan of deathmatch. I love it. I think it's cool, but you know, I think you can go a little overboard with it. You know, I think there has to be, you know, for the sake of just gore and whatever. I'm like, even though I like that and I love horror movies myself, to me, it's still at its core. It's like, all right, well, it's wrestling still. So it's got to have some sort of, it's got to make sense to me still, you know. To me, my favorite type of like death match, I mean, obviously all the weapons and everything are available to you, but the whole essence of wrestling and believing in wrestling is, what would you do in a real fight, you know?
Sometimes.
I mean that's kind of how I look at it.
I think the core of wrestling is storytelling through athleticism and through just grandiose personality. So, yeah, sometimes it's what you would do in a real fight if you're doing like a street fight type match, but there's plenty of things that have been larger than life that have happened in wrestling that have been amazing too. So it's
like the gobbledygooker.
Yeah. There's been quite a bit. So, yeah. Or like anyone that's ever wrestled like Doink. Like you see a clown coming at you, gonna attack, you're really gonna sit there and wrestle it? No, you're gonna get the fuck out of there. Really? Like,
I don't get it. I don't get it. People are so afraid. I know a couple of buddies that are afraid of their two main things are clowns and midgets. So they probably hated Dink and Tink, Doink's little, you know, homies. But
I'm just saying, like, it's at the end of the day, it is storytelling, and sometimes it's from a very believable angle. You mentioned Stone Cold earlier. The majority of what he did was street brawling, and I feel like a lot of that was probably the more believable as far as his personality. He'd come in, you know, lay a stunner on someone, throw some punches, some kicks, and drink a beer. It's all good. Like, that would be more of the realistic. But there are more grandiose workers that have also been super dope, too.
How many of these deathmatch shows have you gone to, and are you actually working deathmatches yourself?
I've been to a lot, so I've never really counted.
No, I mean, I don't need a specific number. I just wonder how involved you were in the actual deathmatch like scene.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends in deathmatch. I don't do death matches right now because I'm so new in wrestling, and I feel that deathmatch is an advanced form of wrestling when done properly, as it should be. And I don't judge anyone that wrestles in whichever way they want to, because that's their own choice. But personally, from a safety and just respecting the art form of deathmatch perspective, I feel that you need to have a wealth of experience under your belt before you're doing deathmatch regularly, because a lot of wrestling is mechanics, engineering, things like that when you're doing a match, and people don't really see that from the outside. But the example I like to use is like giving or receiving a power bomb, right? There's a lot of like technical aspects you have to take into consideration when doing either, whether you're giving or receiving, you know, and then you throw in the element of glass or tubes. That's a whole nother level that you have to take into consideration. How's the glass going to break? Like, how do I properly, you know, so there's all of these factors
arteries
added onto. Yeah, that get added on to wrestling through deathmatch. I've done hardcore shows before, which are really fun, super great. I did just have my first experience with glass recently at a No Peace Underground show.
I was going to lead into that, yeah.
Yeah, I got planted on some light tubes and got drug around a ring full of glass. So
be honest with me, girl, shoot straight. Is that straight shoot? I mean, I saw the video. What's up with you and Atticus? Yeah.
You do not see me bleeding.
No, I'm
all over
not talking about that, but I'm saying as far as like the whole, like, I mean, you were pissed off about that, right? That's
yeah, that was a match for Marcus that was in honor of Marcus. That's why it was the Devil's Big Red Dick match.
Right.
It was Lindsay Snow and Jimmy Lloyd, and I guess him and Jimmy have like a beef, whatever's going on at another promotion. But like 440 wasn't scheduled in that match. They weren't like planned to come in. Like, he came in and did his thing, and like, I get it's one thing if you want to do whatever the fuck you want as a wrestler, and I'm trying to stop you as the referee. Obviously, it's not your fucking match that you're interfering in, and you react a certain way. But to take it that far and then to plant me on light tubes when I've never worked on glass before, like,
pretty fucked up.
Yeah, I don't want to really get into that right now. Like,
no problem.
Anyway, so I got my first experience with light tubes that way. And yeah, luckily I didn't cut anything major. I've got a little scar, but it's like thankfully, it like got right under my ear. So it's not really noticeable. And my knees are pretty much healed up. I've got scars for sure, but they're not opening anymore. Knees are the worst to like catch injuries in because they're always, you know, they're moving like this. So they're always reopening.
Oh, yeah. That's a horrible injury. Time consuming, you know, to recover from.
Yeah.
Damn. Oh, well, I'm sorry for asking that fucking question.
It's all good.
Whatever. I mean, you know, that whole 440 thing, I'm just kind of always been like, I don't, whatever. I get this fucking shit, this little click. It is what it is, I guess, you know. Hey, you know what I say? Fuck them. Right?
Yeah, fuck Ohio.
That's right. Except for my boys in the
I've got mad love for a lot of people in Ohio, just not them.
Yeah, fuck them. What so are you watching any like XPW's back, right? I mean, that's a notorious like deathmatch thing, and they're running on all cylinders right now. We've had a lot of their talent on the show. Is that something you're tuning into? And what else are you currently keeping up with?
I keep up with every indie promotion, especially in deathmatch to a certain extent. I usually don't watch show for show unless it's something where I just really dig the card. But yeah, I'll watch a match or I'll watch some spots, things like that here and there. Yeah, XPW, I've seen some stuff out of. ICW is one to watch always. Obviously, No Peace Underground. Circle 6 is another one that's like shot up over the last year and it's just like exploded. So that's been a great promotion to watch as well. H2O up in Jersey. They're always
that's Matt Tremont's shit, right?
Yep. So yeah, I keep up with that. But yeah, I don't follow any one specific promotion. It's basically the workers that I like. If they're on a card together and I think they're really going to dig, then yeah.
That's and there's so much to consume nowadays. Like, you could be the biggest fucking wrestling dork on the planet, and maybe at one time I considered myself that, but I watch so much now where I'm like, do I want to keep talking about this shit? I fucking love it, but goddamn.
Yeah, usually when I watch a full show, like an actual full card, it's vintage WWF, something from the 80s, or actually I just bought this whole collection of like underground WCW like shows. Like this guy, he like does WCW clips on Twitter, and he has like his Google Drive. He's like, hey, I've like had some emergency stuff come up. Anyone that gives me $5 gets indefinite access. I'm like, sold. So I've got a lot of deep cuts from WCW now and stuff.
Nice.
Yeah. So usually when I watch full cards, it's old school stuff.
Who's some of your favorite old school cats?
What era?
Doesn't matter. I mean, we'll talk. All right. Well, let's go. Like, we'll start with the 70s.
70s. Well, I'm a huge fan of Jake the Snake, and he was cutting his teeth in the 70s, leading into the 80s. So, that would probably be my number one.
Jake was such a goddamn. Is that guy just so fucking on his fucking shit and influential, and still a great mind for the fucking business, and created one of the most devastating fucking moves, even though it's been bastardized to fucking hell now. The DDT. I hate that people kick out of it, you know?
I know. It's and it's so funny. Like, again, that's the magic of wrestling. You know, now we have such a formula that people don't have the wiggle room, and everything moves so fast too. It's like spot. There's no wiggle room for creative or, you know, lucky fuck ups like what happened with Jake, where he slipped, and that's how the DDT was invented, because the crowd popped and they were like, "What the fuck was that?" And they were like, "I don't know. Let's try doing it again." And that's how the DDT was invented. Yeah, that one's a fun one too, because again, like even the name, like he got the name from the newspaper. They were spraying pesticides at the time, and that was the pesticide name, was DDT. I can't remember the chemical composition.
Yeah, you listen to the Ramones, DDT's got a hold on me.
Yeah, so, and I mean, like as a trainee, cutting my teeth, I studied him the most for promos. I really loved his promos because he was the only person not screaming, veins popping out of his head. You know, I liked that he had the ability to not go over the top and instead focused on drawing people in. And that was the approach I wanted to take with my own promos. So I studied him a lot for that.
Yeah, just great mind, great psychology, promos, in ring, all that shit. Because, I mean, we were all kids, you know, growing up watching him. And I remember still from like Toys R Us getting the little snake bag, you know, the Jake the Snake had the rubber fucking python. I remember being pissed though, because the snake was only like this big. I was like, Davey, it's much bigger than that. What the fuck?
Right.
But yeah, like so cold, so calculating. Like you felt like this dude was straight like out of a horror movie, or would just murder his opponent, you know, because he didn't have to yell, you know, he just talked to you real smooth and let you know that you could trust. Can you trust a snake? Like,
yeah. And I mean, that was the thing, is he brought, I don't want to say like a Hannibal Lecter, but he had like an intellectual vibe about him. And when he spoke, you know, so many promos now, it's like, oh, you're stupid, shut up, blah, blah, blah. At least on the indie scene, maybe not WWE, but like it's a lot of that. And it's a lot of lowbrow. And I don't believe in that. I believe that you need to talk about who you are. I think you should build your opponent up. And even though you built them up so much, you tell the crowd why you're still going to beat them. And that is a good promo to me. That's telling a story. That is getting the message across. And so much of promos nowadays is that, you know, you're stupid, shut up, blah, blah, blah. And that's why I liked Jake, because he was able to tell these stories, and it led to some incredible stories. His feud with Rick Rude. Hell, from one promo, Stone Cold Steve Austin got so much of his shit just responding to Jake's promo. Like out of one promo Jake cut on him, he got the 316. I think he got the bottom line from that same promo, like all of those catchphrases. So yeah, I really appreciated that. So definitely a big Jake the Snake fan. And I'm a huge DDP stan, like massive Diamond Dallas Page fan, massive. And
you practice the yoga? Oh,
3 years going.
Really? You're a DDP? What is that?
I've got my I've got my 100K club T-shirt and everything. I'm bona fide.
Holy shit. So, I mean, you could vouch for this, right? Because I've legit wanted to talk to people. I mean, you see the wrestlers. I know it's got to do something, you know? And just like Dallas is such a super. I love that dude. I was never a huge fan of him growing up into wrestling. Like, I didn't hate him, but I kind of hated him. I had friends that liked him. I was like, you know, fuck DDP. Like, I didn't get it at the time, you know? But as I grew older, I'm like, man, this dude. And hearing his story, too. I mean, he busted his ass and late stage in the game, almost 40,
35
you know, like,
and a half.
Yeah, like learning the sport and then having some like killer matches and moments that, like, I always say, I can't remember, was it Halloween Havoc or what was it? But that one Goldberg match, he probably gave Goldberg his best fucking match that he ever had, you know, like that shit was insane. He got done so wrong, like so many outsiders do going into WWE. And it's also cool. What was it? One of the early WrestleManias. He drove the Honky Tonk Man, Greg Valentine? I think he drove him to the ring in a pink Cadillac. Fucking Dallas is he's the driver.
He was a manager. I think that you're talking about, I think he was still a manager at the time. I don't remember if he was wrestling.
He wasn't wrestling. Yeah, he wasn't even shit in WWE. They just called him because he had the car. Like, people knew him. But he's the guy in WrestleMania way back in the day, driving him, and he's just like, hey, you know, got the cigar going. It's like, fucking Dallas, dude. And
yeah, it happens. I mean, God, like when I was growing up, that's how it was with Eddie Guerrero. And I was like, who's the guy driving the car? It turns out, you know what I mean? Ends up being one of the. But yeah, so yeah, DDP yoga works. I don't know what kind of endorsement you'd like from me, but yeah, it's cool. A great thing. And as a wrestler, it helps a lot with recovery and preventative, because, you know, when your joints, your muscles, everything's flexible and strong, it just helps prevent injury a lot. And I definitely feel it when I don't do it, especially after a match.
Oh yeah, I mean, it helps the aging process too. I wake up every 100%. Morning like just like creaking everywhere. And I'm like, oh man, I got to stretch. But then I stretch and I feel like I'm gonna have a heart attack. So what the hell? What's going on?
Right.
Maybe I need to get on that DDP yoga kick. But man, great guy. And you got to respect what he did he gave us extra time with Scott Hall, you know, for fans of Scott Hall out there and his family. He got extra time because of him. And Jake's doing so well because of him. That to me will be like his greatest legacy, because as I like fucking people, right? I can get along. I know we don't really know each other, but I can get along with anybody that's fucking cool, you know? And anybody else that's up on some bullshit, just fuck them, you know? Fuck off. I ain't got time for that shit. And that's what I like about fucking Dallas. Like, what a humanitarian. That's some just straight up good people shit. Like, bringing people back to life and giving us more time with some of our heroes, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What about? Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say, yeah, that aspect of him being able to get along with everyone and just generally trying to help people for the better. That's awesome.
What about like of the modern age? Like, say,
like right now,
from 99 to now.
That's a huge gap.
Yeah, but it's still kind of what I would consider. I take wrestling so like every like 20 years, you know.
Well, 99 is still Attitude Era for me. So if you want me to throw out those, that's gonna be like Guerrero, China, Taker. I mean, all the greats. I'm going to hit you with all the A-listers because there's a reason that they are now legacies. You know, that era of wrestling was just amazing, magic, awesomeness. Tajiri, another one of my personal.
The Japanese buzzsaw, so under fucking rated. So
amazingly underrated. He's so good.
Oh, yeah. I love when he wrestled with Muta, too, because I'm a huge fucking Muta mark.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking at my wall here of wrestlers and seeing if I missed anybody from that era. But yeah, so those going into right now, like currently, I actually was so happy for this storyline when it happened. But before the storyline, my favorite wrestlers were Sami Zayn and the Usos. So and I was like, yeah, finally. And they
went from we the ones to we the none.
Yeah, I know. What an amazing. But talk about storyline. We were talking about it earlier. God, what a great story.
Best story WWE has cranked out, and I would easily say the last decade, if not more.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny to see how that ended up being one of the like greatest storylines in WWE going, because you know before it was like Sami Zayn's so goofy, like why do you? And I'm like, that's exactly why I like him, because he's hilarious and he's a great wrestler. The Usos are badass. Yes, they have 4 moves. That's fine. They've got style. I like them. I like what they're doing, and they just came together and made magic with Roman. So
and the cool thing about the Usos and that whole, it goes back to the family thing, like fans of old school wrestling. Like I look at that. That's why, like, you know, people shit on Cody, but I like Cody because that does invoke the emotion I had for his father and just the appreciation for the classic shit, like what he did with the torn pec in the Hell in the Cell. That's old school mentality shit. Like,
sure is.
Holy fuck, that's a lost art nowadays. And so to me, that's what. Go ahead.
I mean, people of, you know, our age ranges as well. Like, they can lie all they want, but they know they were dancing with Too Cool back in the day. They know they got down with like Rikishi and Scotty 2 Hotty and like, you know what I mean? So it's like, y'all can say what you want, but like, you know, you were doing that. So like, respect the bloodline. You guys know.
I'm going to lie about that. I'm not going to lie about it. I never really got down with him, but you know, maybe I
really not even once.
Yeah. No, not really. Not till I got older.
Honestly, the thing that sold me into that was the sunglasses. When they take out the sunglasses and they'd have that moment, I was sold. That was it.
The Tonga Kid. Who would have thought he went from fucking the Tonga Kid to Rikishi? But you know, shit like that. He's in the Hall of Fame. You know, Attitude Era. There's a lot of guys. The Godfather, like. I'm going to put Papa Shango in there. Papa Shango was a dope fucking gimmick, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool.
So are you watching are you keeping up with any like AEW? What are your thoughts on that product?
Yeah, AEW is cool. I don't usually watch a full night of AEW. Here and there I will if it's like a special night. Like when Gage and Jericho had their match, I watched.
Yeah, that was cool.
That was a date night. That was a whole night for that. I'm really busy, so it's hard to sit down for a full show. But yeah, I'll watch matches here and there. And, you know, sometimes there will be people that I know that'll be up there. So I'll just like watch to like support. And yeah, I like to see what's coming out. You know, a lot of the time there's not a whole lot of.
It goes back to the story.
The story. And
there is none really with them. What stories, excuse me, the in-ring competition is fucking next level, but what's drawing you to that? You know, that's why I think the honeymoon phase is like, because people are so like ADD, everything's thrown at them nowadays, and it's just like, oh yeah, you just did this insane spot after spot after spot match.
Well, I am ADD actually, so
I think we all are.
Yeah, unless you have a good story, I'm probably gonna be like, all right, I'm gonna head out now. Like that's the 3rd moonsault I've seen. I gotta bounce.
Yeah, and that's the thing is what stories, like the last good one I can think of is, you know, the Punk MJF feud. That was pretty dope.
I like Danhausen. I mean, I got hooked for the Hookhausen, the Hook and Danhausen story. I like Hook. I was digging that for a minute. But yeah, I've had a little bit more trouble getting hooked into a story with AEW. I also haven't given it my full attention. I haven't just sat down and watched like a good chunk, like a few like episodes of it, just because I'm always all over the place myself. So primarily when I watch wrestling, it's for a purpose. Generally speaking, it's to find new or old, very old creative moves that my whole thing with wrestling is I like seeing things in a different way because it's so oversaturated now, because you see so much of the same thing over and over and the same moves being used over and over, and finishers are now just one after the other. They're just completely disrespected. The super kick, DDT, all of these moves that we can sit here and name.
Free on television too. It's not even like to the point where I can maybe understand that in a big time matchup like Omega Okada or something at Wrestle Kingdom,
Right.
But you see it every fucking Wednesday or Monday night, whichever you're watching, and it becomes watered down. Like, ugh.
Yeah, that's what. And so I like seeing things done in a different way. And I like seeing things that were kind of lost to time. And I take it back a few decades to get those things, sometimes several decades, sometimes black and white era.
Nice.
Just to get, like basically all of my chain, like, I not all of it, but primarily my main studies for chain and grappling were Johnny Saint, William Regal, some of Bryan Danielson's early stuff. So that's Johnny Saint's like, you know, kicking it back. So yeah. So I don't get to watch full episodes so much, but primarily clips here and there.
What would you consider your like I mean, if you had to put a name on it, if you had to put a genre on it, your in-ring style?
That's a good question. When I get asked, I basically, because I studied so much of the 80s wrestling, when it came to getting down my fundamentals, because it was at a slower pace, because chain was regularly integrated into wrestling, I say that I'm, you know, 5'5" and 135, 140 pounds, but sometimes I wrestle like I'm 6'4" and 280. You know, so
yeah.
I'd say it's got a lot of brawler in it. But because I often wrestle people larger than me, I have to be agile. I have to be quick. I have to catch people off guard, because brute strength is not the business when you're little like me all the time. So even though my attitude is that way, you know, I got to work around my physical differences. So that's when like the Tajiri, the Rey Mysterio, the things like that come into play, and I try to sneak attack.
What about RVD? Were you a big fan of RVD?
Honestly, I didn't watch a lot of RVD as a kid, but as far as like nowadays, I mean, technical wrestling wise, dude is amazing. Like one of the best if you just want to watch someone execute a move flawlessly. Like he's just ridiculous, and it's just like, how are you this good? And you go out and then do your thing, and then you come back and it's just like nothing. It's just like flaw. I'm like, how do you do this? Unreal.
Yeah, he's definitely, you know, one of a kind, to quote that. I didn't like his WWE theme song, whatever. But the guy was just an innovator. I look at every high flyer nowadays. I'm like, you know, these guys were in. There's your Eddie Guerreros, your Rey Mysterios, your Hoovies, RVDs, Sabus. Like, just, I don't know. RVD's big. He's in the Hall of Fame, right? But much like Sabu's on a lower level, unfortunately. But just still feels underrated for like how much of an influence he was. And he was another guy who was just like, because the old promos back in the day were fucking. Mm-hmm. They were pretty dope, like old ECW shit. He got the WWE, ECW, and it was like, whatever.
Both of them had really good ECW runs. RVD and actually, wasn't it RVD that Cena faced in ECW where Cena got booed out?
The WWE version. If Cena wins, we riot. And they would have, I believe, because you know those fans. Those were the diehards. Those are now like the GCDUB fans and shit. Just like, man, if you fuck up, look what happened to Cardona.
To be fair, like GCW used to be that way. If you fucked up, you got the you fucked up chance pretty hardcore. Like, I don't know what it's like nowadays, but there's definitely some of that ECW vibe in that back in the day. But I feel like RVD and Sabu way more respected on the indies for sure. I feel like I hear about them all the time in regards to the indies. I don't really know about mainstream, like the casual fan and stuff like that, because I don't super stay in touch with that scene. I stay more close, but I know they're definitely both very well respected, and they should be for sure. Like, absolutely. And if they're not more respected on the mainstream, they should be as well, because they definitely were some innovators and gave a lot to wrestling.
For sure. Fucking Bada Sabu's a broken man. You know, at least RVD stretched. Sabu probably just went and listened to some fucking Judas Priest and drank some beer, smoked some weed. I know he probably did that. You haven't really mentioned any, you know, we're talking about wrestling shit. You're a female wrestler. I'm not gender, whatever. It doesn't fucking matter, because I'm a fan of like intergender wrestling and, you know, and all that shit. So I'd like to get your take on that too, real quick. But as far as female wrestlers go, you mentioned China, but other than that, is there anybody else? And who are you kind of keeping tabs on, like on the indie scene, that you would like to face?
Yeah. So as a kid, I didn't watch a lot of women's wrestling because
it wasn't really there, you know?
Oh, it was
I'm
there,
glad
but
that
it
you
was
said that. I'm
terrible. Like,
glad.
what they made those women do is awful. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
still have the Edge and Lita sex scene in the ring burned into my skull. Like, that was awful. I was like, I didn't want to be that.
No.
Yeah, I wanted to be the China. I wanted to be the person that would go in there and body press anyone and kick anyone's ass and didn't care about
Yeah.
who or what they were. Like, didn't matter, you know? And unfortunately, it was just a product of the times and how women's wrestling just didn't get a lot of respect from the
Because they were just selling
mainstream.
skin, basically. I mean, you know, a lot of them, the girls were doing Playboy. You know, how many of them? Ashley Mazzaro. You had, God, who's Brock's wife?
Oh, Sable.
Sable and Tori, and then they did one together, and then all these other girls. You know,
Yeah, it's a shame because a lot of people, like I mentioned Lita earlier with Edge, Lita's an incredible wrestler. God, you want to talk about agility, amazing
yeah,
high
she was.
flying?
I
Like,
remember her from
ah,
ECW
she's
before
great.
all
But
that shit.
again, you know, you didn't get to see a ton of that, and they'd put her against, you know, Trish Stratus, and Stratus would go over, and it'd just be like, you know, like. No offense. I mean, Trish Stratus, you know, she's had an amazing career and left her mark on wrestling, but I
Mm.
just could never get down with the handstand in the turnbuckle. Like, that was the most unreal move I've ever, like, I still not a big fan of it. But so yeah, I didn't watch a lot of women's wrestling. I watched men. And as I started training, I watched a lot more women. Before that, obviously on the indie scene, there's a lot more opportunity for women to do their own thing, to be creative, to be their own person. And so I watched a lot more women on the indie scene. But when I started training, I started going back and trying to find more women's wrestling. 80s Japan, Akira Hokuto, you know,
Yeah,
Toyota, people like that, dope, amazing. And I didn't get to see them as a kid because primarily it was WWF for me.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, Bull as well. But yeah, nowadays, trying to think if there's anyone on the WWE roster that I really vibe with.
Probably not. They're all because I don't see them as being your type. They're still all. And hey, you know, I don't be this guy. Fucking cancel me if you will, whatever. But I'm not big on like the whole people doing so much plastic surgery to their face. And there's a couple women on the roster. I was like, that's who that is. Like 2 years ago, it's a totally different person. Do what you
Yeah.
want, whatever. But I'm just not. To me, it's you know whatever. It seems weird because you're gonna get old and you're gonna look like shit. You're gonna look like shit when that all goes.
Yeah.
How'd that go
Yeah,
against Red?
so like regarding their wrestling, I'm a big fan of intergender, and I don't see that a lot in WWE, so that's probably why I don't watch it as much and don't have as many women um,
Impact
that I
does it a
follow.
lot,
Yeah, I have like a yeah, I know some people on Impact that are some great wrestlers that do a lot of
and
intergender.
they're intergender. Like I think the women they're booked strong there when they do it. You know, like Lucha
Mhm.
Underground did that really well, and you had Sexy Star was even the champion of Lucha
Mhm.
Underground. Like that was a cool concept at the time because you know, like back in the day, I would have believed, like you said, China. I would have threw the fucking world title on her.
Yeah,
The world fucking
absolutely.
title because it's believable. You're not going to do it, you know, to
100%.
anybody else, and maybe not even like fucking like I love Lita, but
Mhm.
the masses would believe that China would fucking be a world champion. You know, like she was IC champ. You know, at least they did that with her.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, so as far as women that I watch now, it's usually, you know, people that I'm friends or acquaintances with that are on the indie scene that play heavy in the deathmatch and hardcore scenes. Those are mostly the people that I vibe with and would want to work with and watch the most. But yeah, when it came to training, that was kind of the approach that I took with things was that I, you know, they'd teach me something and they'd be like, well, don't worry. Like when you wrestle women, it will, because I was training with big, giant dudes, the ones that were
Right.
6 feet and 200 plus pounds. That's all who I trained with, basically. They'd be like, don't worry. Like when you wrestle women, it won't be like this. I'm like, no. I was like, I want to be trained to be able to wrestle anyone. Like, I don't care about their gender and I don't care about their size. Like, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it so that I can wrestle anybody.
And that opens so much more doors for you anywhere, like storyline wise, you know, just being able to do that. Like that's.
Well, yeah. And just from a personal perspective too, I didn't want to be limited because of my size or gender.
Right.
Like if Rey Mysterio can go out there and wrestle these big dudes, like why the hell can't I?
Nailed it.
You know what I mean? So there are different wrestling styles that you have to take with each person. Like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to punch out, you know, some big massive dude, but guess what? If he throws a clothesline, I sneak on his back and put him in a sleeper hold. He's not going to be punching me if he's knocked out, if he can't breathe.
Or
like
we always say, girl, we always say on this show, the low blow always wins. And
yeah,
that's
you know
kicked
what?
in the
I actually stay away from the low blows because I believe in my wrestling ability. I really do.
I appreciate that.
And if I can't beat them by brute strength, when I hit the ropes, I'll do a baseball slide. I'll knock their feet out from under them. They can take a face bump. They can eat the mat, and I'll work on them from there. There are ways to wrestle anybody. There really are, and that's what I focus on.
Fuck yeah, that's awesome. As we wind down here, I want to kind of dip out of the wrestling world. You know, we've mentioned a few times tonight, you know, the word, the genre, the subject, horror has come up. Mm-hmm. I'd like to know, because we're big, huge motherfucking horror marks here. Yeah. What are some of your fucking just a little bit.
Okay.
Return of the Living Dead, you know, that's probably bar none my favorite fucking movie. I mean, there's so many, but what's some of your fucking favorites?
Well, I've got the first Evil Dead movie poster tattooed on my arm as a half sleeve.
Saw that. I commented on that. Yeah.
So fuck yeah. That's one of my favorites.
Been playing the game.
Pretty much the classics. As a very, very, very small child, probably way younger than I should have been able to be allowed to, I'd go to the video store when we had video stores and VHSs. Yes. Back in the day, once a week with my mom, and I'd
Faces of Death.
I'd end up going to the VHS section of, you know, going to the horror movies and picking out horror movies. So I started very early on the classics, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street, Child's Play, Halloween, Friday the 13th, got a lot of B horror movies, you know, things like Ice Cream Man. It's got Ron Howard's brother in it. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah. What is his name?
And then it's become more popular now, but at the time it wasn't very. But like Dead Alive, you know, she's got her mouth stretching out the eyeball.
Fuck yeah. That's I love that movie. I've been watching that movie since like 1993.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, yeah. So my horror genres they're pretty diverse all over time. You know, I watch a lot of I mean, yes, I've seen Nosferatu. Like I've watched the whole thing, you know, all the way up to modern day horror. It's probably my favorite genres, you know, horror, sci-fi, stuff like that. So, I don't think if there's any new horror movies that I really dug.
Did you dig the like? You're in the? I mean, you got a wide palette, very diverse palette, I might say. We've been really big. Well, I should say, because I don't know if Sredner shout out to our homie Bruiser Bodie who couldn't make it tonight. The X movies that came out. So there's X, and then there is Pearl that just came out, and then there's about to be Maxine. Like it's
X. Was that A24 that put that out?
Yeah.
I feel like I meant to see that and I hadn't. So I love A24 though. All the stuff they've put out that I've seen has been like solid.
It's really solid. Like
yeah, I'm really grateful for them for the horror genre that they came along.
I know, right?
They're kind of keeping it alive right now.
Yeah,
what's
really.
That? I said they're kind of keeping it alive right now.
Yeah, just being creative, doing something different.
Blumhouse was doing a good job, and there's been some recent, I should say, Blumhouse projects that I can't really get behind, you know?
I feel you. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the horror, like a lot of the reprisals I've not been digging, like the whole Halloween, like it should have ended after the first reprisal with him burning in the basement. After that, and then they kept coming back. I was like, all right, we're going to sit through this.
It's Kane! It's the Undertaker's brother, Kane, by God!
Yeah. He should have died in the fire, much like how I feel about Glenn Jacobs now. But
oh shit! Into the fire.
But yeah, and then like I think it was the second one. He's just like going around. There's like people. He's in a group, and it was just like he's just like Friday the 13th, which is fine. But I want that from Jason Voorhees. I don't want that from Michael Myers. You know, like I think each character has their own psychology, their own way of being, and when you change that, it fucks things up. Like the Joker, and no offense if anyone likes it, but Suicide Squad. Like the Joker is like a Hannibal Lecter character, and then you take him and make him whatever Jared made him, and I wasn't about it. So I like having that core in each character. Yeah, so the reprisals, I haven't really been digging too much. I'm trying to think if there's anything I've seen recently. I actually just tonight, I don't know if it's going to be horror or not, but I was kind of vibing with it. I saw it on Netflix, and I passed it up because I didn't really think much of it. But then I saw there's like a dead body falling out of a casket, like screenshot on Twitter. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll check it out. It's called You. I don't know.
Yeah.
If
Oh my God! Don't tell me you didn't tell me. Oh God!
But I just started watching it, so I was like, "Oh,
it's fucking good, girl. It's fucking good."
Okay, cool. Yeah,
my fiance got me hooked on that shit a few years ago, and she just told me, she's like last week we started watching it. She's like, "You's back to season 4." I'm like, "Oh shit,
cool.
We've been waiting for a while," and like it's cool now because it's like a British murder mystery thing. Like if you go back and watch the first shit, I mean the guy's awesome, but he's annoying because most of it is him talking his thoughts, and he's just doing shit. I mean, there's obviously he's talking and interacting with people, but that's like the basis of the show is his thoughts. He's this weirdo serial killer. Like he doesn't want to kill, but he just does it out of necessity. He always keeps like pieces of shit. I can't go into the story. It's really involved, but please
don't, because I'm still very early on. But I appreciate it. I'm glad you put it over. I just want to
give you, hype it a little more so that you go, go watch the whole thing. I was digging it. You don't like bullshit, cool. And you can invest your time in it. I give it the thumbs up.
Well, I'll commit to a show if I know it's going to be good. Like the last one that was horror that I felt like I really committed to, that I can remember off the top of my head. Well, I mean. Yeah, I was actually going to say the Hannibal series. I was just thinking of like straight series, but like the Hannibal series, I thought that was incredible. I dedicated my time to that 100%. Yeah, but I just haven't had a lot of time. I'm always on the road with like wrestling and busy and like all of that it's hard to sit down with something. Mostly, you know what I do like 24/7 is murder podcasts. That's what I'm on because I'm always driving or like going somewhere. So I just have podcasts constantly. That's what I do.
Yeah, we kind of do something like that. I mean, I guess that's what people say we fucking do.
Like during the pandemic, like the very beginning when everything was shutting down, I got hooked on Lost podcasts on the left. And like
they're great. They're fucking awesome.
Yeah, I'd listen to murder podcasts here and there, but I got really hooked into them, and then I just like hadn't stopped, and it's 2023 now, so 3 years later, here I'm just like still hooked on podcasts all the time. So yeah.
Fuck yeah. Well, as we end the fucking episode here, is there anywhere, what upcoming shows do you have going on? Where can people find you on social media, and where can you got some new merch, some new shirts that drop, so pop that shit real quick.
Yeah, I just dropped some shirts, some new t-shirts, definitely in the style of like a dark comic book cover. My moniker, Mistress of Fear, is actually deep cut to a late 90s Batman spin-off Scarecrow comic. That was a one-off. Nice. So let me just get my nerd glasses. But
are you a big comic fan?
I am, yeah.
All right, well, this episode is going to take 5 more minutes because you're going to dive into your comic book fandom. Proceed.
Yeah. Well, I don't get to collect as much these days because, again, very busy. But back in the day,
it's expensive too.
Obviously, The Watchmen, one of the greatest of all time. I've got the smiley face tattooed on my back. Love that. Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. I had that whole series before he did Invader Zim. I had those and the Squee, and I think I even had I Feel Sick, which is another spinoff he did. Trying to see the old Nightcrawler. I'm a huge X-Men fan, and so
I got Nightcrawler on my pajama pants. Look at that behind the fucking suits. My son tonight, he's like, "Who's that?" I'm like, "Nightcrawler," and he's 2, and he's like, "Nightcrawler," and I was like, "Yes." Said it right.
Yeah, my uncle was a big nerd, so I got to be exposed to some comic books and stuff very early on. Daredevil, like before the Ben Affleck, I think was the first movie. Before that came out, I got to, read the comics, and I
was a big Ghost Rider and Lobo fucking fan.
Nice, yeah, absolutely. And then I dig into like some random So when I had free time, early on when I had free time, I just go to the comic book store and just try to find a nice graphic novel that I could, sit down with and waste time for a week or two. Nowadays, though, again, just not as much time as I wish I had.
Well, fuck it. We can't get it all done. And it's just, these are trying times to do so. I try to burn the candle at both fucking ends every day of my life. And it's like, damn, man, I miss doing the things I like just relax.
I hear you. Well, that's why, like, when I'm on the road and stuff, I take my SNES emulator with me. So when I'm in the hotel and stuff, I can play like Donkey Kong Country or Earthworm Jim or something. Like the only time I have to play video games. And it's small enough. It's the only console I have that I can take with me and also will not get broken in my luggage. So that's cool. Actually, the last show I worked, Shane Mercer's promotion, XCF, he had a TV monitor downstairs. So I got to hook my SNES up to it during the show. So I got to play my Super Nintendo before I had to go do my match.
Oh, yeah. Now you're playing with power.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that, you don't play any modern shit at all, though? Like modern systems?
I have a PlayStation 4 and I have an Xbox 360.
I still do too, and you know what?
Very old.
Mine's modded out, so I still play some games that I bought illegally.
Yeah, I mean, my heyday, I was playing I love BioShock. I love Gears.
Yeah, that was a great fucking series, man. Where is the new one? Come on, give us some more. Where's the TV show?
Yeah, really. I mean, I have. There's only 3, I believe. I kind of fell off after the third, but I have all 3. I've played through all 3 many times.
The big daddies.
Yeah. Oh my God. So I went to this convention in Utah once, and they had like a Big Daddy cosplay, life size with a little. Oh my God. It was amazing. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. I was like, that is so sick.
Fuck.
Anyways, not to dork out too much, but yeah, nowadays I don't get a lot of time to sit down and play stuff, but I played a lot of Call of Duty back in the day.
That's all I do now, like much like you, between my fucking podcasts and doing shit, going to shows, wrestling or concerts and family and my band and shit, like you don't have much time to do anything. Call of Duty is great for me. I can sit down and I'll do like a round of zombies or a fucking couple of team death matches real quick, get out of my system, and I'm done. It's kind of mindless, Yeah. But then when I have to play games, like I got the Evil Dead game, and I haven't invested in the multiplayer mode yet because I'm like, I gotta fucking talk to people and like formulate a plan. I just want to kill, defend and kill. Like it can't happen.
I hear you. Yeah, there's just not a lot of time to build nowadays. And
there's some really fucking cool, like if you're a horror fan, there is some really cool shit. Like that Evil Dead game is dope. And when they dropped the Friday the 13th game, I got that. That was pretty cool.
I've played some of that. I think I even have that actually.
Yeah, cool concept. And they've built off the, what is it? They call like the asymmetrical horror. That's like the genre of the video game. But you got Killer Clowns from Outer Space coming out.
Oh, that's
Texas
cool.
Chainsaw Massacre coming out. Like
Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Well, the movie. I mean, the game.
It's so great.
Out, obviously, I don't know about that, but
my fiance just sent me a picture the other day, a text, and she's like, speaking of fiancés, as we're recording this episode tonight, happy VD to all you crazy lovers out there.
Yeah, happy Valentine's Day.
In Radio Land.
Spread the love.
She sent me a picture and she's like, I ordered this for the living room. It's a giant fucking Killer Clowns from Outer Space with all the clowns on it, like fucking rug. I'm like,
that's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a big 80s horror movie, sci-fi, all that fans. And like they, the theme song's done by the Dickies, who also did Toxic Avenger.
The Killer Clowns.
One of the greatest. That's another, we're talking about horror movies. We're not going to be able to get into it because we got to end this, but Trauma. So Toxic Avenger, Dickies, love all of that stuff.
That shit's awesome. I met Lloyd Kaufman at, what was it? Where are they? Is that C2E2? I think
C2E2.
Yeah, in Chicago.
Fucking met him, man, with my oldest boy, and this is probably like 4 years ago now, but he was so cool. Like I just went up to him and I was like, sometimes I get a little nervous, starstruck, even though I'm a guy who's supposed to promote shit and do things. I'm like, I don't like being that dude,
Yeah.
Like to get wrestlers on the show, I go to local promotions, I hang out backstage. I might sneak into a conversation, just give people a beer, but I'm mainly quiet, and I try to be just cool about it and not be like, hey man, I do this. You want to come on my fucking show? No, I'll save the yelling and screaming for when you're on the show. But
some of the biggest people, like, I don't get starstruck or fangirl out ever, but like the couple of times I did was over like horror movie stars from my childhood.
I would freak out if I met like Joe Bob Briggs. Like I want to fucking get him on the show so bad, because like that's just a good chunk of my childhood was like the TNT Monster Vision shit. Like I remember that, and then like USA Up All Night, which he wasn't, I don't think he was a part of that, but that was a whole just same time, Mm-hmm. But when I met Lloyd, like I went up to him and I was just like, hey, because my buddy, shout out to JR, is probably watching and listening right now. He wanted to fucking meet him. And we walked past him like, yeah, great. And then like we're walking away, and he's like, he calls us back. He's like, so what do you do? What's
I haven't met
Lloyd Kaufman talking to me about it, and he was being very sincere. And I remember
very young.
My son's fucking 15 years old, and Lloyd Kaufman is asking him, he's like, what's your favorite movie? And he's like, what'd he say? He's like, Cannibal Holocaust. And the kid's
That's awesome.
He was very 10 cool at the time, but like Lloyd Kaufman's like, oh. He was just looking like, well, you just fucking stunned the man, like, but he was so super cool. He was just like wanting to know what I did for work. Got really personal, really quick. Like, I was like, man, you're a good dude, man.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like when you've been in it that long, a lot of people usually end up being pretty cool and pretty chill. They've seen and done it all. So
have you seen I don't know if they've wrapped filming, because it's been in talks for a while, but they're doing a remake of The Toxic Avenger, and it's
oh really? No,
yeah, who the fuck is it? Who was the little dude from Game of Thrones? Peter Dinklage?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I'll totally go see that.
I know. I'm like, space pants.
I want to see. Yeah, totally. I want to see how they do that. That sounds really interesting. Yeah. Well, fun fact. So, talking about being a musician and stuff. Before I knew what I wanted to do with my life, I was stuck between maybe being a musician and maybe being a monster movie makeup artist. And it was like, go to Berklee College of Music in Boston or go to Savini's monster makeup school. And you can't get financial aid for making monsters. So I went to music school.
Nice. So we know a guy that went to Savini's school. He was on the show. He's a really fucking cool dude. Screaming Bullseye on Twitter. He does like wrestling busts and shit. But you went to Berklee for music?
Yeah, I dropped out too. Isn't that cool? I'm a music school dropout. Can't get any lower than that. Sorry, Mom. Decided to drop out of music school and be a wrestler. Can you imagine? I make people proud.
Berklee too. I mean,
I know. It was fun. It was fine. My music business professor was in Cameo. That was pretty dope because I loved Cameo as a kid.
No shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wired up.
Totally.
I don't like the corn version though. That's fucking garbage.
It's okay. I lived in Bakersfield for a while, so I had to listen to a lot of corn.
God damn. Like back in the day, it was, it took me a while to get like hip with those dudes. And I was like, okay, first 2 albums I can deal with. And then they just became such like just trash that like even nowadays, like I don't want to hear any of it. I know all about it, know your fucking enemy, I guess. Whatever. Yeah,
I mean, I won't knock anyone's music. Like, well, there's one person, Gregory Iron. I'll knock his music all day.
Yeah, fuck him.
But yeah, I won't shit on anyone's like music taste too bad. But I will say with Korn,
don't say because you listen to country.
I do listen to country. I listen to everything. But with Korn, I will say the one cool thing they did was that I think it was like Twisted Transistor or whatever, when they had Snoop Dogg and Exhibit playing them or whatever. That was pretty cool. I was like, that's
Twisted Transistor.
I liked that.
It's like Jonathan Davis, though. I remember there was an, probably like 2000, man, when did Deftones' self-titled album come out? Like 2003. And Chino was in one of the guitar magazines, and he was talking about, because them and Korn came up, in the Cali area and played tons of shows together and did each other's albums and shit. And he was like, man, like those guys, he's like, how many more albums is Jonathan going to write about, like, his daddy? Like, fucking touching him. And
people like, make careers off of it.
They do. And he's like, now he went from being back then, he was like, well, he's a 35, 40-year-old man still talking about that shit. Now he's like, we're not fucking, you know, we don't fuck around with that shit.
It sells to somebody. That's the amazing thing.
Who are you digging right now on the music scene? Like
music-wise?
Yeah.
The one new person that I got turned on to, I like a lot of rockabilly and stuff like that as a teenager. I mean, my first musical like love was like Elvis Presley, and that morphed into rockabilly. And then
are you a Danzig fan?
Hold on, we'll get there. But so I listened to a lot of rockabilly, and then the neighborhoods and stuff I grew up in, I listened to like a lot of hip hop and stuff like that. And then as a teenager, I listened to a lot of punk, and then I found psychobilly, which is rockabilly and punk mixed together.
Tiger Army, fucking Power of Moonlight.
Yeah, and I found horror punk and the Misfits and Danzig and all that, and that led me into goth later on as well. Yeah, so I listen to Danzig. I love the Misfits. Michael Graves can like die, but Famous Monsters was one of my favorite albums of the Misfits as a teenager. So,
really?
Yeah, I love that album. I just do not like Michael Graves as a human being.
No, he's fucking one of those weird guys. We don't talk about that.
Jerry Only, super dope. Danzig helped change the scene, you know. Forever.
Danzig's a dickhead, but I fucking, you know, every time he's around,
Danzig,
I go see him.
It's like, yeah. So, but nowadays, so going back to that, listening to a lot of rockabilly and stuff, there's this kid, Steven Sanchez. He's kind of bringing back the 50s vibe and doing a lot of that stuff. I was listening to him this week. Very cool stuff. But mainly, I mean, I don't listen to a ton of new people unless it's someone that really stands out.
Yeah.
You know, I can't.
Well, I mean, new to you, it doesn't even have to be like, I guess that's kind of a vague question that I
That's kind of hard coming up in music to find people that are new to me that aren't new, but I'm always digging.
I mean, there's
genres I haven't touched yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of shit like, you know, and I listen to a lot of underground music, and it's a shame to think of how many great artists like I've found, you know, just through me and my bandmates, and my drummer shows me a lot of shit, and we found shit from like the 70s that was this band Buffalo. It was an Australian band. They're fucking heavy as hell, and it's just grooving and it's good. And I find it hard to believe bands like Soundgarden weren't influenced by these dudes, you know?
Right.
Like shit like that is really cool to go back and find that. It's new to me, you know? Or like when I remember, what was it? Probably about a decade ago when the band Death, it was 3 black brothers in Detroit.
I was listening to them like 2 weeks ago during the gym. Yeah.
Oh, keep on knocking down, knocking them down.
Yeah, I like Death. They're pretty cool.
It's fucking awesome. Like, and it's a shame that that guy who wrote all that shit is fucking gone. You know, their one main brother, like that. They were so great. You know, proto punk. That was like everybody's talking about. Like, you know, the Ramones or the Damned are really the first ones that. Well, they actually released the first punk album, I guess. But everybody wants to know who started it. And it's like these 3 black dudes in Motown, you know, like the Motown scene were doing this fucking music before anybody. They didn't know what punk wasn't even a term musically at the time. You know, they're just up in their fucking attic room or whatever and like cranking out these jams. And they're like, dudes were listening to Who and Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
Holy shit, you got that sound out of it? Like, that's mind-boggling.
Every time I get into one of these conversations, it reminds me, I don't know if you've seen this, if you guys are John C. Reilly fans, but the Walk Hard movie where he's like the knockoff Johnny Cash and he's all high on drugs. He's like, and his bandmate's like, you sound like some kind of punk. So it reminds me of every single time I get in one of these conversations.
I do the cocaine.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to try, what's he trying to get him to do?
The best scene is when he tries to get him to do marijuana.
Yeah.
He's like, am I going to get hooked? Is there any side effects? No. What about sex? Is this going to make my dick not work? No, you'll have the best sex ever. The whole scene is fucking awesome.
Yeah, I love John C. Reilly. He's hilarious.
John C. Reilly's a shit.
Hell yeah. Dr. Stephen Brule. That's right. For your health. He's fucking great. Well, it's been a fucking killer conversation. Once again, I'm going to give you the opportunity to pop any merch and any upcoming dates and where people can find you.
Cool, yeah. So I'm Angel Metro. I'm Angel Metro. Hi, I'm Angel. You can catch me. Well, I've got Orlando at the end of the month. like was said earlier, I just dropped some new merch. You can find all of that stuff on my website. It's angel-metro.com. You can find me on all the social medias under the same name too. So whatever your platform is that you dig, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, just find me. It's Angel Metro, exactly how it sounds online. So thanks for hanging out, guys, and watching and stuff.
Fuck yeah. I hope you guys dug this fucking hangout. It was a fucking awesome fucking session once again, because we're always bringing you the fucking latest and the greatest. And Angel, you definitely fall under that fucking category. If you guys like what you've seen and heard, be sure to rate and review on whatever fucking podcasting platform you just downloaded this episode on. Leave a fucking nice comment. Leave a shitty comment. A comment's a comment, right? Eric Bischoff said controversy creates cash, and we ain't making shit, so I don't believe him. But maybe we just ain't got the hype. So you guys need to bring it. All podcasting platforms, YouTube, like, subscribe, share. To you motherfuckers right now in the live chat, we love you. Thank you for tuning in every week. ProWrestlingTees.com/JPDUBTees. Buy the fucking shirts. That's what the graphic says if you're watching right now on YouTube, but I'm fucking covering it up. You can't see it. Anyways, I fucked up. There's one more thing we got to do. You got to do this. Tune in next week. Follow Angel Metro. And until next time, wet 'em up, wet 'em up. Wet 'em up. Wet 'em up. It's so fucking wet for Angel Metro. If you don't fucking check her out, buy the merch, and go to the fucking matches, you're gonna fucking pay.
You gonna do sex to me?
Did you like that video? If so, be sure to hit like and subscribe and check out more killer content from your boys at Juice Pro Wrestling. Whoa, yeah!